always see people putting their stories on these videos, so I decided I would share my own crazy experience that happened to me one day when I was riding the bus home on my way home from sports training after school. I usually get a lift on this day, but for some reason I had to get a bus. I checked on my phone and started walking to the nearest stop. The bus came pretty much soon after I got there, and there were only 2 people on the bus with me. One was a middle-aged woman, and also a much older man. I sat at the back and started playing on my phone. I must have really got into my game, since the next time I looked up, I realized we'd passed my stop. Like I said, I basically never get the bus, so not keeping an eye on where we were was probably a really stupid mistake on my part. Something to know was where I lived was right near the rough area of my town, so the area where the bus was driving now was in that place. There was a lot of crime around there, and homeless shelters as well. I got up and walked to the doors of the bus knowing I had to walk back through this area to get back to where I lived. I started walking back the way we drove from. When I got to a crossing in the road, I noticed the man from the bus was standing right behind me, a little to the left, so only just in my view. The light said walk, and I saw him trailing behind me. As I was walking, I saw a store coming up that I thought I would go inside and get a drink from. I went inside, but when I came back outside, I noticed the man had kept walking, and he was much further up the street now. I caught my breath and laughed it off when I realized he was just a normal guy. I started heading towards my house again, and I ended up cutting through a few streets by crossing an alleyway and saving myself about 5 minutes of extra walking. As I was approaching the street, a patrol car cruised past my view, and I heard the brakes squeak as the car passed my view and came to a complete stop. 2 officers got out of the car and started yelling, "Get on the ground." I was so shocked, so I just dropped to the floor not knowing what to do. They started sprinting towards me, but as the first one got really close, he ran right past me, and as I turned my head to see where he went, I realized he was arresting the man that was following me from before. I couldn't believe he was walking right behind me that whole time, and I couldn't hear him since most of the floor we were walking on was grass. I ended up finding out he was a career criminal that has been in and out of prison his whole life for crimes. I also found out that on the day he was following me, they found 2 knives on him, as well as a watch and a wallet from someone he'd robbed earlier that day. Make sure you check your surroundings when you're walking home, and also watch who gets off the bus when you do. I went to a beach resort with some friends. The resort we stayed at was really close to the beach. When we first arrived, the first thing we did was go to the pool at the hotel. The pool had a bar with seats underwater, so you could order drinks without getting out of the pool. I had a few drinks, and it was getting to around afternoon time. We'd all agreed that we were going to go out tonight and stay out late. I should mention that all my friends I went on the trip with were all female too. We looked up some places we could go see and found a few clubs near where we were staying. The first place we went to was an open nightclub right on the beach. The outdoor area was sand on the floor. We ended up getting hit on by a group of guys who we presume lived in the area. Before we knew it, they were buying us all drinks, and one of my friends even went on the dance floor with one of the guys. The guy I was chatting to seemed more shy than his friends. Some girls think that's cute, but it wasn't a cute shy. It was more like he was nervous about the situation and being around a lot of people. Barely 5 minutes later, and he asked me if I wanted to go to the outdoor area with him since it's more quiet and less people. I felt a little uneasy, but since my friends were all around, I decided to go with him. We sat down, and he told me he was going to get both of us a drink and come back. I sat on my phone waiting, and eventually he came back holding 2 drinks. He was wearing a black button-up shirt, and I could see a bit of what looked like white powder on the shirt's chest pocket. When I took the drink from his hand, he noticed me looking at his shirt. He looked down, and his eyes widened as he realized what was on his shirt. I saw how scared he got, and I told him, hey, it's okay, I don't mind. I presumed he was just having party favors to himself. He looked up at me and said, no, sorry, I need to go get a tissue, I'll be back. I told him I had one in my bag, and he said, no, it's okay, and he walked off really fast. I texted one of my friends to come outside. I told her what happened, and we just kind of laughed it off. As we were talking, my other two friends came outside to see us. As soon as I saw that As we were talking about what happened, I looked down at the drink he gave me, and I noticed there was a few white spots with white powder around the top of the glass. As soon as I saw that, I realized the powder I saw on his shirt was most likely some form of roofies, and that's why he ran off when I spotted it. I ran back inside the club to see where he was, and they were all gone. I couldn't believe I came that close to drinking a spiked drink. It made sense why he was so nervous from the start now, knowing his intentions. The whole time we were talking, he had whatever it was in his shirt pocket right in front of me. We never went back to that club again. This happened about 4 years ago. I live in a resort community and started working for a local real estate agent, taking photos of homes for sale. I usually photograph 3 to 4 homes a week. I'd seen some unusual things, like the occasional hidden room or unique art collection left behind. I'd never encountered anything scary though, until this happened. It was a summer day, warm and bright. I knew the neighborhood I was heading to and had no concerns about safety. The area was very suburban, with a large park and school nearby. I packed up my camera and drove 20 minutes to the home. Upon arrival, I began my session by taking pictures of the exterior. Nothing was out of the ordinary, and after struggling to navigate the sharp slope the home was on, I managed to snap its sides and rear deck. It was time now for the interior shots, and I proceeded to the front door and entered the code and tried to unlock the front door. As I fumbled with it, I felt overwhelmingly uncomfortable. Something washed over me in that moment, and I knew I shouldn't have been there. I finally opened the door and found a house completely destroyed. The living room was a sea of debris, an EMT board laid in the middle with a charred doll beside it. Holes littered through the walls. Light bulbs were smashed everywhere. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie. I observed all of this without taking a single step further. I immediately closed the door, walked to my car as fast as I could, and called the agent. I told the agent she would need to find someone else to take pictures of this house. She asked me why, and as I tried to explain it to her, I realized I sounded a little crazy. I didn't know how to professionally describe to someone the feeling of being scared for no apparent reason other than the house being filthy. She told me she'd seen homes that were less than welcoming, but we both had a job to do, and she couldn't complete hers without me doing mine. I left the property, but decided I didn't want to lose my job over this. I called my father, who lived locally, and asked if he'd accompany me to the house. In all my days, I had never heard my dad discuss anything remotely spooky. He's a very no-nonsense kind of man, and simply won't tolerate talk of ghosts or witches. I thought he'd be perfect for this assignment. He'd keep my head in the game for sure, and I arranged to pick him up at his house in 30 minutes. My heart sank a little as I pulled up to my parents' house, and my dad's truck was gone. My mom came running out, purse in hand, to tell me that my father had to leave for work reasons, but she'd go with me instead. She brought along a flashlight and assured me that I'd just be fine. As we drove to the house, I described to her what had happened. Her cheerfulness came down a few notches, and I could tell she was slightly unnerved. We parked in front of the house, and I knew she didn't want to go inside. I didn't want her to go inside either. She ended up coming up with a solution. She'd call my cell phone and talk to me as I walked through the house. She'd stand right outside the front door. I answered her call, turned on my flashlight, and headed in. Again, immediately upon entering, I was scared. Just for clarification, I'm not scared easily, and I'm not one to see or feel things of that nature ever, so the fact that I was actually feeling something terrified me. By this time it was later in the day, and the house was positioned in such a way that it was completely shaded from the sun. The electricity was off and it was dark, very dark. My mother was on the phone telling me to breathe. I had a hard time speaking as all I took in is what I saw. The toilets were completely black on the inside. The kitchen had a blackish reddish smears all over the counters. I just kept clicking, trying to focus on anything other than the disturbing things inside this house. I went as quickly as I could through the main level. I then came to a set of stairs leading down. I told my mom through the cell phone that I was heading down. She continued to reassure me and told me to hurry up and get it over with. I began walking extremely cautiously down the steps one at a time. The steps led to a landing and then turned the corner. All I could see was a white wall at the bottom, and I had this immense feeling that I was going to see something horrific once I turned that corner. I was 2 or 3 steps away from the landing when I heard it, a scream coming from my phone. Not a mild scream, but a blood-curdling scream, like someone was being murdered on the other end of my line. My mom. I've never ran, nor have I ever since as fast as I did up those steps. I completely expected to find my mom laying lifeless just outside the house. I got to the top of the steps and there she was, standing there looking completely terrified and perplexed. I grabbed her hand and we ran to the car. We drove for nearly 5 minutes before one of us said anything. She then turned to me and said, "Tell me why you were screaming." I told her that I thought it was her. Neither one of us were screaming, but both of us, for a certainty, heard a woman screaming for her life on that phone. We stopped at a grocery store parking lot and just sat there, trying to catch our breath. When I got home, I uploaded the pictures without actually looking at them and sent them to the real estate agent. I told her she'd have to do the editing on her own, as I would not have them on my computer. I then deleted the email and every single image. Because of that, I don't know the address of that house, nor have I ever driven by it since. In hindsight, I would have liked to research the history of the property. Alas, I'll never know what happened there.